Welcome, Maggie. Hope you're having a good time wherever you are. We are going to read 3 poems by William Butler Yeats. Yeats was is the first writer poet that we're going to experience that straddles into the 20th century. I believe he died in 1936. He was born in the 1870s, something like that, and died in 1936, 1860s. And he was Irish. And if you know anything about Ireland, especially in the early 20th century, but for hundreds of years, really, Ireland has been a war-torn, sad place. England took over control of Ireland and enforced the Anglican Church upon Catholic Ireland. And so Catholics and Protestants have been fighting. Pro-Irish nationalists who wanted to throw off English rule have been fighting. Even in the 70s, you know, when I was little, there were the IRA bombs going off in Dublin and things like that. It's been a really sad, sad history for a people. And I know this is I didn't plan this, but since it's St. Patrick's Day, okay, this people who kidnapped and enslaved St. Patrick, but to whom, after he escaped from slavery, went back home, felt a calling of God to go and evangelize these people. The Irish monasteries were a major force in keeping civilization alive in the West. When the Roman Empire fell, it was the monasteries in Ireland and those islands off the north coast of Scotland that copied manuscripts, that made those beautiful illuminated manuscripts like the Book of Kells, and kept civilization alive for us. We are indebted to the Irish and to St. Patrick for being willing to go back to these people who had mistreated him and teach them about God and evangelize. But because their closeness to England geographically, you know, and their intermixings with England, it's been a rough, rough life for Ireland. Compounded with, I guess I will ask you, why do Americans celebrate St. Patrick's Day?
A lot of Irish immigrants.
Yeah, because many, many Americans are Irish. In the 19th century, not only were the Irish oppressed, the Catholics were horribly oppressed. I mean, executed. All Catholic holdings were confiscated by the English. If you were Catholic, you're done. No, you can't own anything, you can't hold office, you can't be in politics, nothing. Not only dealing with all of this, but then famine set in. And the average person in Ireland apparently was very dependent on potatoes, which doesn't seem like much of a diet to me personally, but you know, it's better than starving to death. So then the potato crop failed, and people, they were dying, and hundreds of thousands of Irish came over, and these are the men who, many of them worked on the railroad, the Transcontinental Railroad, and are the reasons.
Civil War.
Yeah, and fought in the Civil War, the Irish regiments, yes. So.
And I really do know why the Irish love potatoes, because I like to make them fries.
Oh, okay. It depends on how the potatoes are.
I'm related to some Irish people.
I have an 8th uncle who's related to a cousin who once met a guy.
And you know what? I feel like you don't have to be Irish to like French fries.
Yeah.
Especially those Checkers fries.
And potatoes in general,
Checkers has the best French fries ever. I don't care what you say.
No.
I will fight to the
Oh,
death
I will
over
fight
Checkers.
beside you. Because Checkers, okay, no, we're not, nobody's fighting over fries today.
So, yeah, I'm related to some people who helped out during the Irish famine to smuggle food across from England. I'm not sure of their names, but it was
Very
on my
cool.
dad's side of the family.
Well, back to Mr. Yeats. William Butler Yeats is an Irishman who lived through, you know, the famous Easter Uprising of 1916, I believe, fighting wars. And we're getting, with Yeats, with Emily Dickinson, we were a little bit there. You know, sort of enigmatic poetry, And I know you were kind of like, I think John Donne was enigmatic. But, you know, if you could read through his language, you'd know what his position on something was, you know. And usually it was on God is wonderful for his religious poetry. But the more modern we get, the more we turn into, you know, you read those poems and you think, I have no clue. I completely don't know what this person is talking about. And I don't even have a little glimmer of a clue. At least with Emily Dickinson, it wasn't so bad. Yeats is on the borderline. So we have 3 poems, Leta and the Swan. So this is a famous Greek mythological story. Leta was one of the mortal women that Zeus decided he took a fancy to, which he had a habit of doing over and over again. And so he comes to them in different forms because they can't handle, you know, Zeus and all his Zeusness. And in Leta's case, he came to her as a swan. Why he thought she would find a swan attractive, don't know. But she is the mother of Helen of Troy. Helen, who was taken to Troy by Paris and the Trojan War was fought over. This is where Helen comes from, Leta and the Swan. So later in the poem, it talks about the broken wall, the burning roof and tower, and Agamemnon dead. All right? Because this encounter is going to lead to the Trojan War eventually. Yes.
Have you seen the movie Troy?
I have not. I don't like violence. I close my eyes. But my sons usually tell me, they're like, Mom, you could watch this, or Mom, you don't want to see this. I also heard they changed a bunch of things and it would irritate me.
They didn't change a lot, but if you don't like violence, I would suggest not watching it.
I close my eyes. Generally in those sort of things, you know when it's coming and you can close your eyes in time. Do you know what I mean?
You can feel the suspense.
The second poem is completely understandable. The Lake Isle of Innisfree. He wants to go to an island called Innisfree, to a cabin, to get away from the world.
Sounds like
Easy.
what's his name?
Walden,
Ishmael.
it's a throw. Oh, Ishmael, he wants to run away. But the last one, the one on the second page, the second coming, okay, nobody really knows what this poem is about. I'm just going to say it, all right? The second coming sounds like it's talking about Jesus, and it does have references to Jesus. However, Yeats was not a Christian, adamantly not a Christian. He does not believe Jesus is coming again. He doesn't even believe he came the first time, all right? So I want you to read this poem, and basically, if you come and tell me what you think it's about, you really can't be wrong, because nobody knows. But I'm going to give you my take on it. I give it to you because it is the most quoted Yeats poem ever, and it has a couple more of those lines that I keep telling you are famous lines, and then you say, yeah, I never heard that before, and you think I'm lying to you, but I'm not. Anyway, read these out loud. Read them every day. And memorize poems, and psalms are fair game.
Maybe he got a hold of Revelations, because this sounds just like God coming back.
It's-
Especially when he comes to a shape with lion body, the head of a man, a gaze blank, pitless as the sun.
Apparently, though, Yeats was into occultism. He
Oh,
was in,
that's not so
and apparently he wrote a whole big book about the Sphinx. So the lion body and the man head, you know. But yes, I see exactly what you're saying.
It's
But
very interesting.
so we don't know if he thought there was a new age coming and the Sphinx was going to come to life and come.
I don't know.
Yates was a little, but he wrote awesome
If you're gonna
poetry.
call it your
He sounds a little whack.
Just a little maybe. Okay, and we finished Moby Dick this week. Probably no surprises. Did everyone in here already know that everyone but Ishmael was going to die?
No, I suspected it.
I
I
had,
thought Moby Dick was gonna die at least.
I had heard that they were all gonna die, and then I was like, no, it can't end like that.
Rogue One style.
It could end like that.
No one
It
knows
could.
about it.
Um,
But yeah, but she's not
She's
specific
not
for
part of the
Rogue
Rogue
One.
One
Anyways.
unit.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6 essay topic suggestions for you. You get to pick one. Towards the end of class, I want to talk about, how to approach them, how I would approach doing an essay. Some of you are old hands at this. You don't really need my approach. Some of you could use my approach. If you, however, in your brilliant mind, think of something else you'd really, really like to write about that wasn't one of the choices, ask me. And I will either say, that's a great topic, or I will say, that's way too big. You're going to have to write a book. Or I will say, yeah, that's too small, you will have to just write a paragraph. Yeah, that will be 2 sentences. You can't write on that. A study of Ishmael's shoes or something like that. Like, no, you can't write an essay on Ishmael's shoes. I don't know anything about his shoes. But I would like to attack 3 main discussion areas. But as you guys know already, who knows what you're going to say? We could end up talking about anything. It's always a mystery when I come here.
When you were talking about the coffin,
yes.
I thought, okay, Ishmael's writing this. Could the coffin potentially be the way that this book reaches the mainland and gets published?
Oh, because he puts the manuscript in the coffin. Yeah, that was a good thought. It didn't turn out that way, but that's an awesome thought.
I mean, that's another way it could have
I
been.
don't understand what the whole deal with that is.
Okay.
I cannot follow this book.
Okay.
The
So let's before we talk about big picture things, let's zoom in. So where we left off, so Karsten, you do understand Ahab wants to catch the whale because it took his leg.
Yeah.
Like this is obvious. So, and they keep meeting these ships. And you know what? I want to apologize to all of you. So I kept talking about the Gam with the Rachel looking for her lost child, and I
Yeah,
forgot it hadn't happened yet.
That was later.
Yeah, I'm sorry. When I read back over this week, I thought, shoot, I've been talking about that for 2 weeks. I thought that already happened. No, that didn't already happen. So now you know what I've been talking about. That this ship had lost one of the whaleboats, and the captain's son was in the whaleboat. We've seen several times in the book how they get separated. The whale drags you away, and you go on a Nantucket sleigh ride, or you just row following the whale. And if you've got several boats following several whales, what's the ship gonna, which one is it gonna choose to follow? And so this guy has lost his child, and it's called the Rachel because there's a prophecy in the Old Testament, Rachel weeping for her children, for they all are no more. And it's Bethlehem, it's the slaughter of the innocents. All right. In the New Testament, that's why Bethlehem is weeping for her children, because they are no more. So I'm sorry about that. But so Queequeg thought he was ill, so ill that he needed a coffin.
Okay.
Right? And so he asked the ship's carpenter to make him a coffin. He took his measurements and everything, but then he suddenly got well. I have no commentary on that. He just suddenly got well.
I'll die when I choose to die.
Yes.
He said.
I will die when I choose to die, and I've got things to do, I've got business to take care of, and I can't really die right now because I could not stop for death. All right? Because I could not stop for death, I got well and hunted more whales. That's the way his poem goes.
For me.
Yes.
In the movie, he rolls, he does chance or something, and it predicts that he will die. So he asked the carpenter in the movie to create him a coffin that's able to fit both him and his spear, his harpoon.
But he gets well, and so they lose. They've lost their life buoy. They've lost a lot of stuff in attacks, and they need a piece of something to cast out for overboard sailors. And they decide, hey, we've got a perfectly decent box. If we just caulk it and seal it up so it doesn't take on water, it will float, and we can attach it there where we put the life buoy. And does that make sense, Karsten? So what else was there? Like, what else are you puzzled about?
All the messed up prophecy that was like at the end. Like
Oh.
in the last chapter, they're all talking about weird prophecy and stuff.
Okay, so apparently Fidala, remember the guy who's been compared to the devil by various characters, has made prophecies. And we don't see the scene where they're originally made. We just hear in retrospect Ahab mulling them over. So apparently one of them, at one point Ahab had been told that only hemp could kill him. That means a whale can't kill him. That means, and he takes it to mean what? Does anybody remember? So hemp, what do they do with hemp? It's a plant. What do they do with it?
They turn it into what?
Ropes.
Oh.
No.
Different hemp or
They
just
were not
different
smoking
use?
it. No. So they talk about hemp and ropes. All right, because they would weave it and turn it into rope. So he was saying, oh, yes, if only hemp can kill me, maybe I'm going to be hanged someday for something. Like, but that means I'm not going to die at sea.
Oh.
That means Moby Dick's not going to kill me.
That means
So
I'm
basically,
immortal.
But then-
that means I'm immortal at sea, exactly.
But then at the end, it's like he gets knocked off the boat by the rope.
By the rope, and he gets tangled in it and it drags him down. So the hemp does kill him. The prophecy comes true. But you can see where he's coming from. If you really believe, because it appears that he has all faith in Fedallah, right? This is his sort of, I don't know, like
His
demonic,
second mate.
well,
No.
demonic spirit guide sort of guy that he really puts faith in, Fedallah. And so he believes only rope can kill me, so I'm totally fine here. Then apparently another prophecy was that Fedallah would go first, would die first, but he would appear again before the end. And this really puzzles Ahab, because Fedallah dies on the second day of the chase, the three day finale. Like,
And so then.
but how
then
can he?
Ahab's like, oh crap.
Yes, but he said, but he has to come again. And how can he come again? Because we've been sailing all night from the place that Fedallah went down. Not realizing that Fedallah has also been tangled up and lashed on to Moby Dick. So when Moby Dick comes up, Fedallah appears again. And then he does say, oh no. So apparently these prophecies, we didn't hear them originally made, but we hear it come out, and then it explains to us, okay, that's why Ahab is so confident. And but you know, it's another connection too, because so if you have someone who goes before and they die or they disappear, but they're supposed to appear again before something happens, what does this remind you of? I'm not asking this question well at all, but maybe I'll get the answer. Okay, there's a prophecy that so and so will come back first.
Carson had said Jesus.
Oh, okay. So who's supposed to come back first?
The Antichrist.
No, you're on the right track. But when Jesus was, before he had died, during the first coming, okay, somebody was supposed to come first.
John the Baptist.
Some people said, oh, John,
Elijah.
Elijah comes first. And the disciples would even ask Jesus, what do the prophets say when they say Elijah must come first? And then he says, for those who have ears to hear, he has come in the form of John the Baptist. John the Baptist was speaking the same. But you know what? Elijah did come, didn't he? When did Elijah come? He didn't come alone on the Transfiguration. Elijah did come. Moses came too. All right, and spoke with Jesus. So, you know, so you're reading this book and you're thinking, oh, he's gone, but he must return, you know, he must come first before I go. And it's all very gospel. It's very messianic sounding suddenly. So that's what was going on there, Karsten. That you didn't miss anything. We didn't leave out a chapter where all, you know, Fedallah sat down with Ahab and explained all these prophecies. They just kind of trickle out at the end. And I don't, am I leaving one out? Was there another one that, I think that was pretty much it, that hemp cannot kill him,
Well, then
that
you
Fedallah.
In the boat, the ship, with like the two hearses.
Oh yes, that the hearse that was made from American wood,
Yeah, I think, I remember something like that.
and your hearse must be made of American wood,
Are they
something like that. Was that something had to be made of American wood?
Are they talking about the flotation device, the coffin that's in the water? Since Queequeg was specifically for that certain type of wood that he saw in Nantucket that would be made as canoes that they would put dead bodies in and push it into the sea. Would that be American wood?
It would be.
I
It would
took
be.
it as like the little lifeboats that they have, not the lifeboats, but the boats that they go out to catch the whale. Those would be
Yes.
made out of American wood. And as a hearse drives you to your funeral or to your grave, they were being rowed out to their grave.
Yes.
That makes more sense.
Because the coffin, it's American wood, but it doesn't end up carrying anyone to their grave. It ends up saving Ishmael's life. But yes, those whaling boats were also made in Nantucket, so they were American wood, and they led him to his death. So yeah, I think those were the three big things that apparently Fadallah had told him to boost his confidence that
Then
yes,
again,
you're
you
going to
have
catch him.
Then you have a fourth prophecy from the very beginning.
And tell me about that.
The Elijah that met
Oh,
both
yes.
Queequeg and
So
Ishmael.
Elijah did come first in that sense too, didn't he? He warned Ishmael and Queequeg against going on this voyage and basically threatened that none of them were going to come back again, or only one of them was going to come back again from the very beginning.
Didn't survive.
Okay, so I said I wanted to look at three main things. I touched on this a couple of weeks ago. Go ahead, what?
It's because when he said the hearse is driving you to your funeral, every time I hear the word hearse, it reminds me of Ghostbusters.
The newer one,
The newer one, yeah, because
the all female cast.
the car that they drive is a hearse.
The first
There
were
should be
better.
no new Ghostbusters, but that's not our topic for discussion. Except for Ghostbusters 2 with Bill Murray, the sequel was okay, but there should be no new
I haven't
cast.
seen
Anyway,
old ones.
that's there is only the old one.
Yes.
Okay,
So the effects of the newest one was pretty good.
don't care. Okay. And Disney has no right to remake all these movies. But that is just, we are not having this conversation today. Okay, what we are going to talk about is the democracy. So on the Pequod, and I mentioned this maybe the first week out, do you notice we have every race and religion? We've got pagan cannibals, we've got Africans, we've got North American Indians, we've got Asians, Fadallah and his creepy crew, we've got Europeans, or people of European descent, we have Christians of all stripes. Starbuck is a Quaker. He lets it say ye and thee, thou occasionally. He lets it slip that you can tell he's a Quaker. We have members of the First Congregational Church, which means the whole world. What other place in the world is made up of all colors, all races, all creeds? Where are all welcome to settle?
United
Nantucket.
States.
America.
Well, you could just say Nantucket.
Well, not necessarily Nantucket, America.
But yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
that every creed was in Nantucket, but in America.
They say
We
Nantucket
are
is
a
there.
place that says we do not poll what religion you are when you come in. We do not poll what race you are when you come in.
It's not necessarily religion.
Well, it is, but it doesn't ever mean that we always just let people in indiscriminately. There was always a screening process, But we are a place where we all melt together and become one people, American people, all right? So in this room, we probably have descendants from many, many different places. But it doesn't matter because we're all Americans. It doesn't matter anymore. And so this book was written in 1850. In the 1820s, late 1820s, a guy came from France. His name was de Tocqueville. And Alexis de Tocqueville. Sorry, that was his name. And he said he was coming to study the American prison system, which he did a little bit, but he actually wanted to just take a good look at democracy in action. And by democracy, I'm using that very loosely. I'm using any sort of form of self-government, okay? We're not a direct democracy, but, we vote for things. We vote for our leaders, so. And his premise was this: Democracy is the wave of the future. Self-government is where it's at. And all the countries of Europe are moving towards it, and they're just inevitably going to be moving towards it. So we have this place that's been doing it now for 60, 70 years. All right? Why don't we take a good look at them and find out what's good, what's bad, what we can learn from, and what we should avoid? So he wrote this book called Democracy in America, and it was published in the early 1830s. And on the whole, he was very fond of America, but he saw a lot of dangers there too. Dangers of factions, majority factions taking over, and also just dangers of people falling prey easily to a tyrant. You know, when, I'm sorry I'm going to say this, but in general, people are sort of sheep and not very bright in mass, okay? That's cruel. I don't mean it that way, but do you know what I mean? Like, the vast majority of people just kind of do what they see other people doing. We just kind of do.
Monkey see, monkey do.
Yes, and I don't know that it's just because it was a pastoral community that Jesus was talking to that he sees the people as sheep without a shepherd. You know, people are kind of sheepish. And when you are, and you have one particularly charismatic person who gains your trust and respect, it is very easy for them to take over. When you don't have any strong, when it's just like public opinion is what's driving things. Does that make sense? When you don't have a king or an aristocracy rising up and saying, no, I will protect you from this idea because this going down this path will be bad for you. It's just sort of general, yeah, let's do that. And it can lead you to tyranny. And so de Tocqueville commented on this. So now, 20 years after this book, Moby Dick, and he has this American ship, but it contains all groups of people, all right? But is the Pequod a democracy? Like, do all the sailors get to vote for everything? No.
Dictatorship by Ahab.
It's a dictatorship. It's the point where the crew, the sheepish crew, has said, yeah, let's do that. And they've said, yeah, let's do that about the whole, let's hunt Moby Dick down to the death. Even though he took your leg, and even though all these ships we keep having meetings with, like this guy's lost an arm, and this guy, like, maybe you should not do that. No, they're all in. And so I wrote down, I'm just going to read from my notes here. I noted to myself, the crew is ragtag, running from orderliness and civilization. Remember, why is Ishmael on this boat?
Revenge.
Well, why is Ishmael? Why is Ishmael on this boat? No, this.
Get away.
He just wants to get away. You know, that I'm in a funk and I just want to knock people's hats off in the street. I'm tired of civilization. I'm tired of the nicey nice, you know, I'm just in a bad mood and I'm just going. And we kind of gather maybe a lot of the other crew is in a similar, I mean, you sign on for 3 or 4 years of your life to be gone. So we got people sort of running from civilization, and there's no one to protect them from Ahab. Who tries to protect them from Ahab? Starbuck. He's the only one. He says, look, this is not what we signed on to do, first of all. We signed to fill our hold with oil, to make money for the owners and money to share it out for all hands. This is not what we're supposed to do. He also calls Ahab blasphemous. You're not submitting to providence, to God. You don't hunt down dumb creatures. It's blasphemous. As time goes on, do you think at some point Starbuck gets a glimmer that this is not going to end well?
Probably.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, maybe even from the very beginning. He gets to the point where he knows it's so not going well that what does he consider doing?
Killing Ahab.
Shooting Ahab through the door.
It should have been.
If I shoot him, and what would have been his motivation? Do you remember why he would do that?
So they could have a normal vote again?
Okay, so they could have a normal vote again, and so they don't all hurtle to their deaths. This is not going to end well. And I don't think Starbuck would do something like that just to save himself. He doesn't seem like that type.
He seemed like the guy that was trying to save everybody, because he knew what was gonna happen if he didn't.
So he's the only force, because Stubb and Flask are kind of not super reliable. All right, Stubb kind of goes with the flow. That's his thing.
That's his deal.
But Starbuck is the first mate. If the Pequod were a nation, Ahab might be the king, but Starbuck would be the aristocracy. He'd be the upper crust. He's the one, he gets to go down and eat first after Ahab eats. Remember that scene where they all eat in cycle? One of them eats and basically when the one after you gets called, that's when your meal is done. Like whether you're done or not, when the other one comes in, you leave. But Starbuck next to Ahab is at the top of that heap. He's the aristocracy. There's no aristocracy in America. If somebody wants to just take charge and all the people are behind him, what will stop him? Now you could say our Constitution, and rightly so, but don't we see this sort of thing playing out? We don't have one leader who's taking, charismatic control of everybody and everybody's behind him. But I think we can all see how it could happen. Ahab becomes a tyrant over the Pequod because there's no protection. Starbuck isn't powerful enough to protect. Does that make sense? I don't know. Was Melville trying to say the Pequod is the United States, hurtling to destruction if we fall under the sway and the spell of one man? I don't know. But it is interesting that it hadn't been very long in America, but Andrew Jackson was the 20s, the 30s, the first American president who wasn't aristocratic. He was just a guy. We have Washington and Jefferson, and they were wealthy farm owners. They were the wealthy. They were the educated. And Andrew Jackson was the first one. He was just a guy. They say that at his inauguration, people came to the White House and they were like climbing on stuff with their muddy boots and stuff, and people were disgusted. It's like, oh man, this is what we've come to.
But didn't he, wasn't his inauguration, they went to the White House and everyone just got mad drunk? Same as Jackson or someone else?
I don't know, but people stormed the White House, and they said they were tracking muddy stuff everywhere, and it's like low class people. We don't really say that anymore, but yeah, very blue collar. It was very blue collar celebration, whereas it had been a educated one before. So this is where we're going. And de Tocqueville, in the back of my book, there's a quote from him, and he says this: his only hope for protection for America, for protection for any democracy. He says, "Hitherto, no one in the United States has dared to advance the maxim that everything is permissible for the interests of society, an impious adage which seems to have been invented in an age of freedom to shelter all future tyrants." Okay, so far, no one's gotten up to say, hey, if it's for the good of society, we really ought to be able to do anything. And according to Tocqueville, this is what tyrants say. I'm going to do this. It's for everybody's good. Okay, he goes on. Thus, while the law permits Americans to do what they please, religion prevents them from conceiving and forbids them to commit what is rash or unjust. The only thing, in his view, keeping Americans from rushing off to do very, very misguided things was asking themselves, what is right? What is right in God's eyes? Okay. Where is religion on the Pequod? We have the First Congregational Church. But we have sort of an equality of religion at this point, right? In fact, Ishmael even makes the comment, which I don't really find fault with. He said he'd rather, there at the beginning, he'd rather sleep with a sober cannibal than a drunk Christian. Right. But Ahab, remember the communion service, all right, where they turned the harpoons upside down? There was another really, really creepy scene.
Oh, the harpoon scene.
The harpoon baptism. Let me see if I can see what I wrote these down.
He called all 3 harpooners and asked them to supply him with blood so he's able to quench his head.
Yes.
Harpoon.
But just like, how much blood would that need?
I don't know.
Just enough to cover it.
But I mean, that would be
A
like
harpoon head would be
But it
like
got
this.
struck by lightning too, so that's.
Yes, I want to talk about that in a minute. I cannot
But then it would be really thin though.
find it. Okay, you know what? When I go through my notes, we'll find it eventually. But you guys remember, hopefully.
They could
That,
just
and
use
he
the-
says, oh, I want to look it up, because he says in Latin,
Ego non baptizo in nomine Patris sed in nomine, I forgot what
in the Diabolos. Diabolos, I think. Okay, I don't baptize you in the name of the Father, I baptize you in the name of the devil. Okay, well, I really want to get a lifeboat and get off the ship immediately, but I really don't have that option, right? Religion is now Ahab. He's like the new,
He's making his own self.
he's making his own religion. He's the, what do you call, the head of a,
Guru?
like a guru. Yes, that's not the word I'm looking for, but it'll do. Yes.
Ringleader?
Of his own religion. So the religion that de Tocqueville hopes will restrain people from doing bad things because they're just wrong, it's non-existent on the Pequot. Okay, something else Ahab does. He resorts to, I wrote in my notes, politician skills. All right? First of all, the whole doubloon scene. Step right up, men. See this beautiful gold piece? It can be yours. And he gets them stirred up, right? And then, oh, it's just like made to order. They have the St. Elmo's fire episode, which was not uncommon on boats, that electrical charge would rest over the masts of the ship and everything. But do you remember what Ahab does? He uses it to maximum advantage. He holds out his harpoon, and he like, the lightning, the electricity dances and it glows. Like, he wields the lightning. He's Zeus. He's practically Zeus. And then, when their compass goes bad from the electrical storm, I'll make my own compass. And of course, you guys probably have enough science to know that, you can take a needle, you can magnetize a needle, you can magnetize a piece of metal by holding it next to something that's already magnetized, running it along it. And it's been a while since I did physical science book with my kids, so you know more than I do about it, I'm sure. But it wasn't magic, but it was to the guys. And so these were the moments. It's like, look at me. Look what I can do. I got the money. I wield the fire. I wield magnetism. Yay, Ahab. Just like he's on campaign. Just like he's sucking away, I don't know. Ishmael might say he was sucking away their hearts and souls. It's a little extreme, but I suppose it's very close. So Ishmael and his ilk are extremely easy prey. And I want you to remember, I'm talking about America maybe in general too, like what makes us easy prey for a tyrant. He's running away from all conventions. Oh, those rules of society, we don't like those rules. We'll make new rules, we'll make our own rules. This is of concern to us because we are surrounded by people now that wish to make their own rules. We've always had them, but maybe they're more vocal. He's running away. He says at one point early in the book, yeah, we're all cannibals, really. We eat cows, we all eat some other creature. We're sort of all cannibals. We're all members of the First Congregational Church. He even says on page 370, well, I don't know why I tell you what page. It's not going to be the same page in your book. He's talking about the fact that sometimes the corpse of a whale might drop among shoals or breakers where it's dangerous for a ship to go, and even long after it's not dangerous anymore, ships will steer clear of it because they'll be afraid that there are breakers or shoals there. And he says, there's your law of precedence. There's your utility of traditions. There's orthodoxy. That's what traditions and conventions are worth. They're just old wives' tales. We don't need to follow them. That's the sort of thinking that has led people onto this boat. So anyway, that's the first thing I wanted to look at, that possibility. I'm not saying that's all this book is about. I don't think there is anything that is all this book is about. There are many things.
Kind of covers all the bases.
It covers all the bases, but it is interesting that we have a community of people running from conventions who want to live their lives in their own way, although they sign on to serve. From all nations, all creeds, just like America. But they fall so easy prey to one man's vision, with only Starbuck standing up. However, Ishmael does change, doesn't he? Last time we talked about the two moments when he's holding hands with people in the oil, you know, massaging the oil. And so, why does that describe to me? How is he feeling when that happens?
Communal.
Communal. He loves other people. He loves them. The first thing that turns him is love. The second thing that turns him is a vision of hell, and the try works, and he renounces it. Okay, second thing I want to talk about, then we'll wrap it up with Ishmael, because he's the main event. Appearances deceive. How many of you have read Emerson's Self-Reliance? Some of you had read that, right? One of the reasons I didn't stick it in this year, because it was on the CC list, but that's okay. So Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau, who wrote Walden, and Bronson Alcott, who was Louise May Alcott's dad. There's one I'm leaving out. It's not Melville, it's not Hawthorne, it's, maybe it is Hawthorne I'm trying to think of. They all lived near each other, and they all got kind of religiously weird, all right? They kind of started the Unitarian Church. Sort of like, it's a little new agey, it's a little weird, it's a little, there's no real evil, and Jesus was just a nice guy, and everybody ends up in the same place, that sort of thing, okay? In other words, what looks evil here isn't really reality, it's just kind of your perception of it. But does rationalism, you know, science, and spiritualist thinking, does it explain our lives? Does anything happen in our lives that can't be explained by science? That's an easy question. Does anything ever happen to you that can't be explained by science? Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Does anything ever happen to us that can't be explained by just rationalizing and logical thinking?
Not quite as frequently.
Not quite as frequently. But Melville was living in a society that said everything could be explained that way. But here, these guys are faced with Moby Dick. And this is crazy. Okay, so there was this section, it's in my appendices, but they collected a bunch of quotes about Moby Dick. Here's what he is. He's described with having uncommon magnitude and malignity. He's super huge and super bad. He has treacherous retreats. hidden ways beneath the surface. He, you know that place where it talks about because he travels, they see him all over the world? He's ubiquitous. He seems everywhere at the same time. He's always associated with evil. Does evil exist? This is not a rhetorical question. Does evil exist?
Yes.
What do we do about it?
What do we do to prevent evil, do you mean?
Yeah, or what do we do? I mean, it's already here. It's too late to prevent it because it's here. So I understand what you mean, but what do we do to prevent evil occurrences or actions? But in general, we're going to group all evil into one lump, okay? I didn't say that very well. You know, instead of thinking of individual evil actions, evil as evil as sin. What do we do about it? It is here. We live with it.
Not much. We don't do much.
Why do we not do much?
We kind of see it as, oh, I don't know who said this, but someone said that you keep letting things slip through the cracks. You keep letting things happen. Like, sorry, I'm not explaining this well. We keep letting things slip through our fingers. Like, take homework, for example. You keep letting assignments slip through your fingers, and it just keeps building up and up. And to the point where you're used to it. And that pile of homework is basically nothing anymore because you just don't. It's just too big for you to worry about, or that pile of homework is too much, and you just don't think about it. I can't remember who said it. It wasn't about homework.
No, that's fine. It could be for anything. I think all of us are familiar with that concept of letting something go until it becomes so enormous that you don't even know how to tackle it. What were you going to say, Karsten?
I think our society has just been so detached from the idea that sin is a bad thing that we don't do anything about it because we don't see anything that needs to change.
Ultimately, we by ourselves can't do anything about it, can we? It's God can do something about it, and I realize that. But remember what Ahab said about Moby Dick. He wants to strike. It's not the whale. It's not even so much that the whale took his leg. Moby Dick is everything bad that happens in the world. Moby Dick is evil, not as an adjective, as a noun. Moby Dick is evil. He is the evil that is in the world. It's all there. Now, Ahab's a little whacked, all right? But at some level, I feel like he must know that Moby Dick can't literally be the lump total of all evil of the world. But I don't know if he does or not. He certainly feels like he symbolizes it. And remember, he says he wants to strike through. He wants to strike through that pasteboard mask. It's like the world's wearing a mask, but I know what's behind it, and it's evil. And it's Moby Dick, and by golly, I'm going to take him out. Here's the problem, though. How does the average person identify evil? Let's talk about away from Christ. Let's just put religion out of it, okay? The average person on the street. How does the average person outside of the Lord identify evil?
Through their emotions.
Okay, through feelings. What were you going to say?
I was about to say how it makes them feel, which would be emotions.
Okay.
Also, if you want to get even more selfish, how it affects them. If it's
okay.
negative towards them or people that they care about, then it's evil.
Okay.
True, people don't seem to think evil is evil when they're doing it themselves.
And the problem being then relativism, right? Mm-hmm. Then you have, it depends on what perspective you're looking at it, whether it's bad or not. Mm-hmm. What were you going to say, Gabby?
I was going to say ethics.
Okay, so just an ethical system, like a human ethical code?
An ethical, logical thought.
Okay. I agree with all of those. I think we're swinging more their direction. I think once upon a time you were more right, and I think we're swinging and they're becoming more right. We're all right. Everybody's a winner in Mrs. Ferguson's class. Everybody gets the prize. No, you don't. There is no prize. So, prize is knowledge, and you get that for yourselves. I don't provide it. So thinking of Matthew and Karsten's perspective, it's hard to identify, and it depends on how you look at it. Remember all these chapters. What is a whale? There's its tail. Here's its head. Here's the different kinds of whales. Here's its fins. Here's its, of course, so it's so huge you can't take in the whole thing at once. So you've just got to look at different parts, right? And here's all the pictures of whales, but people don't seem to agree on what it really looks like, and then they write about whales, but I don't think they're all right. This sounds suspiciously like what you just said about people's perception of evil. It looks different to different people, and you can't really ever get to the substance of it. If whales are evil, and I don't believe whales in general are evil. I'm sure they're very nice. I don't know any personally, but I'm sure they're very nice. You can't ever get to the substance of it. Ahab is fighting something that's a losing battle from the beginning, isn't he? How's he going to strike out at evil? He's become his own god, right? He's baptizing things, in the name of the devil. I'm surprised he doesn't just baptize it in the name of Ahab. Like, that would be the height of it, wouldn't it? Like, that would be even more awesome. We need to write to Mr. Melville and say, in your next edition, you should alter it. The only person, well, let me just go through these, because I wrote these notes to myself. So he's fighting evil. Planning turns out to be useless. They lose boats, they lose their life buoy. Remember at the beginning, he's in his cabin, and he's hunched over that map, and he's got every sighting of every whale everywhere, and he knows where they always are, and he knows where to find them. He's planned this down. In the end, does it save him? No. Does it help
surf for Moby Dick?
Does he even know where Moby Dick is, even with this map? Nope.
No. Human strength is useless. Men get knocked out of their boats like gangbusters here. Information gathering, like we talked about, useless. Man's superiority to the whale, not so much. Ahab ends up losing his second leg. He loses one leg, and then he gets his second leg. He doesn't lose the first one, it's cracked, but then he loses the second one. He's stripped of his leg, his friends, his guide, Fedallah, and his life. Because man can't fight evil alone. Doesn't work. Ishmael lives. As far as we know, Ishmael is the only crew member who did what? Survived, yes. But before the end came, he did something. We've talked about it. He did something.
Repented.
Yes. That was my signal. He renounced the oath and repented. He has turned, like that night when he fell asleep and he literally turned around and he got disoriented. He has turned around. He gets to live. He dies and is resurrected in a sense, not in a literal sense. He goes down, but he comes back up. And an instrument of death saves him. Not an instrument that brings death, but something connected with death. So here's the last thing. I'm going to spend the rest of our time talking about this.
His oath dies in the coffin.
What?
His oath dies.
His oath dies.
And is buried in the coffin.
Yes. His oath died instead of him. For the rest of them, they died. He put his oath to death and repented. So, running through this whole book, we've been talking over and over and over about the Jonah connection. And how can you not have a Jonah connection? Now, I realize that it doesn't say in the Bible that it was a whale. It says it was a large fish, specially set up to. But for our purposes, we're going to equate it with a whale, okay? It's just easier. And that's what Melville does, and so we're going to do that. So from the very beginning, Father Mapple preached on Jonah. And he preached a sermon that ended up being lived out by Ishmael. You know how Father Mapple elaborated on the story and how, and all the crew members said, ooh, who's he? He's probably running away from something. And they tried to gyp him, you know. And then Ishmael goes to the Pequod and they try to gyp him. Yes, the same thing happens. So we have lots of omens at the beginning for Ishmael, right? We have Father Mapple's sermon. Remember way back at the beginning of the book, the first thing he sees when he goes into that, Peter Coffin. Peter Coffin was the owner of the Spouter Inn, if you remember. And he goes in and there's a painting that's like a whale leaping over ships. Doesn't look good for the ships. He goes to the chapel where there's all the dead whalemen, plaques on the walls.
That was his crew. The ship, the whale jumping with the ship, is basically told that the ship was going to take a dive for the foreshadowing of the
Yes.
ship. Coffin in of the spouter.
Yes.
The spouts of the whale, the coffin that saves him.
Yes. So in Father Mapple's sermon, he says, yet even then beyond the reach of any plummet, out of the belly of hell, when the whale grounded upon the ocean's utmost bones, even then God heard the engulfed, repenting prophet when he cried. Jonah cried out in repentance, and this is what saved him. So he came out of the belly of hell, and then you go towards the end of the book, and oh shoot, I might not be able to find it. Hey, okay. This is the last scene we see as everything goes down. The bird of heaven with archangelic shrieks. Remember, a bird got accidentally nailed to the mast? He was trying to put up that flag as the ship was sinking. With his imperial beak thrust upwards, and his whole captive form folded in the flag of Ahab, went down with his ship, which like Satan would not sink to hell till she had dragged a living part of heaven along with her. But Ishmael comes back out of that belly of hell, doesn't he? He doesn't go down. Why? Why? Tell me some reasons Ishmael doesn't die. Not metaphysical, like because he renounced his oath, but physical reasons why he doesn't end up dying. How come he doesn't get sucked down with everybody else?
Wasn't it because, right at the beginning where they're talking about the whale boats and how the rope is all stringed around the entire boat? Maybe he wasn't, caught up in that net.
Okay, yes. Anybody want to elaborate on that?
They said how, the rope crossed between every seat, but they had already lost, 2 boats? Or 3?
Yes, they
So they needed to, overstock that last one, or last 2 or whatever. They needed to put more people on there, and so since Ishmael got on there, he might not have had a seat. So he might not have been, sitting near one of the ropes and got tangled up.
You're very close, and I'm trying to find it. I have one of them, but I'm trying to find. Oh, wait a minute. No. Shoot, why didn't I mark that? That makes me so mad. So they're chasing Moby Dick on the 3rd day, and see, you're not going to remember because you would just read over it and you would just ignore it. People have been tossed out of the boats, but it says somebody got tossed out. 3 men got tossed out, and 2 of them got picked up again. And the last guy was left behind. And then in the epilogue, he says, I was he whom the fates ordained to take the place of Ahab's bowsman, the day the bowsman assumed the vacant post. I, the same who, when on the last day the 3 men were tossed out from out the rocking boat, was dropped astern. He got thrown out of the boat, 3 men got thrown out, 2 got picked up, and the 2 that got picked up went back and died. But the whole action was moving away from Ishmael. The whole sucking, when ships sink, there's an undertow, it sucks things down with them as they go. He wasn't close enough. Think about some other things. His best friend, Queequeg, if Queequeg hadn't gotten sick and they hadn't built that coffin, they wouldn't have had a life buoy ready for him. Ishmael doesn't just survive. Ishmael is saved. God saves him. Think of all these coincidences. He happens to get into Ahab's boat on the 3rd day where it's not normally his position. That happens to be the boat that the 3 guys get knocked out of. And he happens to be the one who floats too far out and they don't pick him up. And they happen to have a guy on board who gets sick and needs a coffin, but then doesn't need a coffin.
And so they turn it into life buoy. They happen to lose a life buoy so that they can make a coffin into one.
Ishmael is saved. And so, the epilogue, in the epilogue, Ishmael, there's a quote. Okay. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. This is a quote from the book of Job. Do you remember that when Job, one of the first things that happened to Job was that all his sons were having a party in a house and the house collapsed on them and killed them? Mm-hmm. And then it happened to his daughters too. And each time there was a servant and the servant would come and he would say, this happened, and I alone am escaped to tell thee. What happened to Job? I mean, in general, be very general. He lost everything and he had terrible suffering. Basically, that's what happened to Job. And he also learned that God is God and Job is not. And God has purposes that sometimes don't seem satisfactory to us, but we're not God. All Job's friends who came and said, Job, you must have been up to no good because God's getting back at you. He's like, yeah, I don't really know what that was. Job was never claiming to be sinless, but he was just saying, yeah, I don't think I'm some egregious, horrible person that God's punishing, targeting me. He's not privy to the whole conversation with the devil, about testing Job. He never knows. God never comes back and tells him that at the end. He just says, were you there? Were you there when I created the world? What do you know about it? Job's like, yeah, you're right. What do I know about it? Somehow, Ishmael is also related to Job, because I don't think Melville accidentally used that quote. He's vomited up out of the belly of hell, like Jonah, because he repented. He's saved. How does the suffering come in? I know he's suffered. I mean, they've all suffered on the Pequod, but I'm not fishing for a particular answer here. Now my mind is wandering. If Job is also, because back at the very beginning, one of the quotes about whales, was from Job. Can you catch Leviathan with a fishhook? Yes. Yeah, and the whaleman's answer is yes. But the answer was supposed to be no. What Job-like experience has Ishmael? Well,
they don't really say, do they?
They don't really say. But if we take that quote, okay, so let's just take the quote. Instead of taking Job as the experience, let's take the quote. I alone am escaped to tell thee. Think of what happens in the book of Job. All the rest of them are dead, but I alone have escaped to bring back the report. In each case. Ishmael is bringing us back a report. What do you think Ishmael's trying to tell us, though? If Ishmael I alone have escaped to tell thee. To tell thee what?
Don't go on a boat with Ahab again.
Well, that was not going to happen, is it? I wonder if it's all of the above. Remember, this is now, the Ishmael who got saved is going to come home and write this down.
He's probably trying to, I don't know, like warn people not to do that. Go with a captain that has absolute power and has control of their lives.
It's futile to fight evil alone.
It's futile to fight evil alone, isn't it? Whether you do it at sea or on land. You know, I hope that you guys noticed a few things at the end. It was just almost not, you weren't able to miss it. We have 3 days of the chase. 3 days. We have the crucifixion, Saturday, the resurrection Sunday. We have 3 masts. The boat goes down, but there's 3 masts sticking up.
The 3 things on the column.
The 3 crosses at Calvary. We have just an abundance of religious imagery. The only thing that saves you from evil. Yes?
There's another 3 prophecies, just to put one out there.
Oh, yes, 3 prophets. That's very good.
3 mountains on the corner and the one guy's like, ooh, look, Trinity.
When they're crying out, they're looking for Moby Dick. This is on the 3rd day. So remember, they sail overnight and they hope that they don't lose him. And everybody's climbed up into the mast now. Like they're just hanging from the rigging. Everybody's looking. And it says, a whole hour passed. Oh, I bet this is my favorite line in this book. I don't know why. I read it to my husband and he just did this. Like, I think it's lovely. A whole hour now passed, gold beaten out to ages. You know how they beat gold until it turns into gold leaf? Like it's as thin as a paper. That hour was beaten so thin, it spread out so much, it was like gold leaf. It was gold beaten out to ages. Yeah, you're looking at me like my husband did. Time itself now held long breaths with keen suspense, but at last, some 3 points off the weather bow, Ahab descried the spout again, and instantly from the 3 mastheads, 3 shrieks went up, as if the tongues of fire had voiced it. It's like the Holy Spirit dancing on the boat, shouting out the tongues of fire. It's like a moment of Pentecost. I don't think Melville wants us to miss the fact that whatever his personal relationship with God was, that God is necessary. We don't fight it on our own. Remember Starbuck and Ahab have a lovely talk. They come to terms with each other. Ahab looks in Starbuck's eyes, and he sees the fact that Starbuck has a young family. Ahab has a young child too. And he tells Starbuck, when I go out for him, you stay on the boat. Of course, he never dreams that the whole Pequod's going to go down. You know, if there's danger, it's going to be out in those little whaleboats. Nope. And he tells Starbuck, don't come out with me. Ahab and Starbuck are fathers, and they both think on their sons.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Yes. And their sons are about to be forsaken by the father. One of them knowingly. Ahab is going to turn away. We have sons. My father, why have you forsaken me? That's going to be their cry. So maybe Ishmael wants to tell us, don't try to fight evil by yourself. Spiritual power, and not Fadala's power. All right? Not demonic power. Don't baptize things in blood in the name of the devil. Not helpful. Repentance and providence. Don't you picture Ishmael coming back, and he's going to wonder for the rest of his life. Those coincidences. Oh, if I hadn't got thrown out of that boat, if they hadn't not picked me up, if Queequeg hadn't gotten sick, if, and there was somebody watching out. It's very cool. This does not even begin, I'm not even pretending to exhaust what this book might be about. I kind of wish we had longer to read it. I have a couple more notes here. And let me see. Oh, I'll mention this note. I wrote down to myself, Jonah and Job learn humility from suffering. Jonah learns to repent, and he learns, I'm not God and I better obey. Job also learns, I'm not God, I don't know everything. Does Ahab learn anything?
Nope, he dies.
Ahab really doesn't seem to learn anything.
Not really.
Maybe that second encounter would have humbled him if he were survived.
Maybe.
It probably, to be honest, it probably wouldn't have because of how self-centered and just outright demonic he was. Like, he was kind of a Satanist, to be honest. So,
Yeah,
like, I mean,
baptizing stuff in blood in the name of the devil.
I
Doesn't
don't
get
think
much worse
that's
than that.
really the type of guy that gets humbled, you know? Like, it's possible, like, people can change, but he just doesn't seem like the guy that's gonna be humbled by anything. Seems like the guy that, yeah, God took him out for the meal he's taking out.
Do you remember way back, this is, on my book it's page 31, so, and there's a lot of pages in this book, so it's really far back. We talked about this on the first week, I think, and I made note of it to kind of see what we're going to make of it later. He's talking about the Greeks, he's talking about water in general, I guess. He's talking about, remember that section about why does everyone want to go to the water? People walk by streams, and the Greeks did it, and they had all sorts of river goddesses and things. And he says, and still deeper the meaning of that story of Narcissus, who, because he could not grasp the tormenting mild image he saw in the fountain, plunged into it and was drowned. But that same image we ourselves see in all rivers and oceans. It is the image of the ungraspable phantom of life, and this is the key to it all. It doesn't say the key to all what? I don't know. Is it the key to all this? Narcissus is the key. So what did Narcissus do?
Kill himself.
Well,
He stared. You can tell, okay.
Yeah.
He stared into the water. He saw his image, and if I remember correctly, he thought it was someone else or something. And he thought, "Oh, you're so beautiful," and he wanted to get closer. So he dove into the water, not realizing it was his reflection.
he fell in love with himself. So much that he couldn't like leave or eat or anything. He just stared at himself. All he sees is himself. Can we see any key? Is there, who only sees themselves? Yeah, remember Ahab looked at the doubloon? That fire is Ahab, that volcano is Ahab, that star is Ahab. Those three mountains are all Ahab. That fort is Ahab. What? Oh my goodness. Look around you, mister. You have a crew. Starbuck sees the crew. He wants to rescue the crew. Ahab makes that startling comment about if the sun insulted me, I would strike him.
How are you gonna do that?
Wow. So just a second, I have to look up, I wrote a note.
Fly up to the sun, get a big hand, smack the sun, and then go away.
He probably would go smack the sun and get burned alive.
I'll go try and smack this whale. Yes, he
Here.
Okay, I'm gonna stop
let me-
there.
Let me go absorb all the sun's energy into myself and become a god of myself, and then go smite the whole entire world.
I hope that you guys, okay, first of all, I'm pleasantly surprised that everybody seems relatively engaged by Moby Dick, even though it was a long read and perhaps some of it was confusing. But nobody came, I mean, you didn't look depressed beyond belief every week, which is good. Gabby, would you, so I can just stay here with my camera and everything, would you give everybody, I'll keep Maggie's here. So I've got essay topics. Oh, actually, you go ahead, and then I've got one so I can look at it with you. And then I want to introduce our next book and tell you how much to read.
Are we gonna have, is the essay due next week?
No, here's what we're going to try. We're going to try an experiment. I'm like, oh no, I don't like the sound of that. I have long wanted to get papers from students and then edit and give feedback and have you do a rewrite to make your paper better. Because, you know, I write things on your paper and then
We don't really.
you just give them to your mom or whatever and you just throw them away, whatever you do with them. And then by the time we write another paper, you've completely forgotten any feedback I might have had for you. And so I feel like we need the feedback, but my problem is I only have you guys once a week. So here's what we're going to do. In 2 weeks, I would like a beginning, we're going to call it a rough draft, but I'd like it to be pretty far along, okay? And I'm going to give you feedback. I'm going to collect them and edit them, scan them, and email them to you so that you can have them. And then during that next week, you can like do a rewrite, or maybe for 2 weeks, you can do a rewrite. Because for some of you, I might, you know how sometimes I write on your papers, what about this? You could have talked about that. You know, then it gives you time to actually do it. So that's my goal. So here's how I would attack this. The first thing you need to do this week is choose a topic, obviously. If, I think I said this at the beginning of class, if you don't like any of those, or you have an idea you think is better, or it just you know, strikes you as something you care about more, ask me. Send me an email or call me and just say, hey, can I write about such and such? Like, yeah, awesome. Okay. But we're going to go on the assumption that you choose one of these. Okay. That's the first thing. So look at the first one. How are the books and persons of Jonah and Job used in the novel? Consider what the books of Jonah and Job are about and compare them to what Melville has to say about the same themes. What do you think Ishmael's return? Okay, we just talked about it. We just had a conversation about this. So if you were listening, then you know you're good. And I just recorded it. It's going to be on YouTube if you weren't listening. So how would you go about this? Here's what I would do. I would like to start with 3 main things I want to say. So I would think about, okay, what is Jonah about? What is Job about? What are 3 main things? Jonah and Job include suffering. They include learning humility. They include mentions of large fish. I don't know, that would be kind of silly one. I would brainstorm ideas. Then I would choose several of them, and I would just jot down ideas, okay? They're both about humility. How are Jonah and Job both about humility? What about Moby Dick is about humility? Who learns humility, who doesn't? You see, and I would organize it under those subheadings. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah.
All right? And then you could write from those. And remember, then when you're done, you stick an introduction and a conclusion. This is my introduction, this is my conclusion. Which I think everybody knows what to do at this point, you know. Say I chose number 2. Consider the novel's many chapters on whale matter. Facts and stories about whales and whaling. These begin on chapter 24. Why is Ishmael so concerned with detailing all the world's knowledge about whales? How does he use this knowledge to make comments and generalizations about human life? Well, again, I'm going to try to think of 3 main large topics about this. What does detailing the whale tell you? That it's incomprehensible, it's beyond human effort to understand, it's too all-encompassing and large a top, you know, something like that. And then I would jot down notes on that, examples from the book, proving that that's the case. The one down below is a little easier. Describe each gam in order. Okay, you don't have to do every single one, but do at least 3 of them. And how each sheds light on the story. So my first body paragraph would be, when the Pequod meets the whatever, Samuel Enderby, they find out the other captain has lost his arm, and it's a good bet that maybe they ought not to keep chasing after Moby Dick, because Moby Dick is bad news and he steals body parts. All right, hopefully you will write something that sounds better than that.
Or maybe Moby Dick is in cahoots with Frankenstein.
Maybe. My last one is more of a lost tools of writing sort of essay. Write a persuasive essay arguing either that Ahab has free will in his choices or that he's constrained by outside forces. And again, pick a side and then choose 3 reasons why. And then give me proof. Give me proof. All right? So,
Like, this is my opinion.
so here's what you should do this week. You should choose a topic and you should at least narrow down and start outlining. These are the 3 main things I want to get across in my paper. Maybe you have more than 3. That's fine. It could be a longer paper. But at least 3 main things I want to get across. And then start, okay, if I think the book of Jonah and Job are about learning humility, show me. How is Jonah and Job about learning humility? How is Moby Dick about learning humility or not learning humility? All right, start taking it, and then start writing this week. When we come back next week, your job will be to ask me questions. All right? In other words, I'm stuck on my paper. This is the topic I want to do, but I don't know, I can't think of a 3rd heading. Help me. And that's what we will use next week for, okay? And then the next week after that, 2 weeks from today, bring me a paper, but this is a paper subject to revision, okay? And maybe we'll spend another week or 2 after that really honing it up, and you can just do the best paper you've ever done in your life, maybe. Maybe not.
My least favorite book.
The next book we're going to read, jot this down, is, you know the book Crime and Punishment by Dostoyevsky. I want you to read, this is one of those books that has a part 1, part 2, part 3, and then each part has chapters. Okay? So I want you to read all of part 1, and then start part 2, and read the first 3 chapters of part 2. I will also be sending out an email. If you're getting my emails or your parents are getting my emails, this will be in the email. It should be about 1/4 of the book. So however many pages your copy has, if you look divided into 4ths, you're going to be close to that. Dostoyevsky. First 3 chapters of part 2.
What was the book's name?
Crime and Punishment by Dostoyevsky, which I will spell for you if you want, or you can just wing it. Mr. Dostoyevsky is Russian, if you cannot tell by his name, and he and Tolstoy are the 2 maybe greatest novelists of the 19th century. They are great. Russian novels are just awesome. But they're big. You think Moby Dick is big because it's long. Russian novels are big because they just are discussing life, God, the cosmos, and everything in between. Dostoyevsky grew up in Russia, and when he was young, he got into a socialist group. That was sort of a think tank sort of thing, but it was illegal, and they all got arrested, and he got sentenced to be shot. But he obviously didn't get shot because later on he wrote a book. He got the sentence commuted, but he got sent for 7 years to Siberia, to a Siberian work camp, the proverbial Siberian camps. And it was not good. Dostoyevsky knew what it was about to suffer. He knew suffering. And he liked to write about people who suffered. So this is before communism. So it's before the Russian Revolution. But Napoleon invaded Russia when he was on the rampage. And Russia suffered badly from it. Russia in the 19th century was a very poor country, and you're going to see a lot of poverty and suffering in Crime and Punishment. Dostoyevsky likes to get inside people's heads, more maybe than any other reader we've read. It's very modern in that idea that not stream of consciousness, but like you're mind reading and you know all the ups and downs of what they're thinking. But do not be disturbed if you get thrown into a story and you're not quite sure what is going on. It's sort of like watching the movie Inception. Just shut your mouth and keep watching or keep reading, and in 20 minutes, you're probably going to have a better idea of what's going on. Crime and Punishment is a bit like that. Okay, you're going to meet this guy, he's going to be talking about doing something, you don't know what the heck he's talking about, you don't know what he's going to do, you don't know what his problem is, and then you're going to meet random people, and you're going to say, this is a very random book. All right, it won't always be. So keep an open mind and keep reading. Work on Moby Dick. And if you have a question about your essay and you do not want to wait until next week, call me or email me, and I will answer you, okay? All right, I'm shutting off for Maggie.